What would you do if you discovered your husband of 8 years was having an affair with your best friend? Not just any friend, your maid of honor, your confidant, the woman who held your hand through 3 miscarriages and celebrated the birth of your twins. I'm Patricia, and this is the story of how I uncovered the most devastating betrayal of my life, orchestrated a perfect revenge that exposed them both, and ultimately found a strength I never knew I possessed. But here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. Sometimes the person who destroys you also sets you free. And sometimes revenge served cold is the most satisfying dish of all. Stay with me because this story has more twists than a Hollywood thriller, and I promise you the ending will leave you speechless. My name is Patricia Mitchell, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life in the quiet suburbs of Roseville, California. Picture this. A beautiful 2-story colonial house with white picket fence, 2 adorable 6-year-old twins named Emma and Jake, a successful husband who worked in tech, and a thriving photography business that I ran from our converted garage studio. Press the subscribe button and turn on the notification button for more interesting stories. My husband, David Mitchell, was what every woman thought she wanted. Tall, dark-haired with kind brown eyes, a successful software engineer at a major tech company in Sacramento. We'd met in college at UC Davis, dated for 4 years, and had what everyone called a fairy tale wedding at the Napa Valley Vineyard where he proposed. David was the kind of man who brought me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, who never forgot our anniversary, who coached Jake's little league team and braided Emma's hair when I was running late. Our friends envied us. "You two are relationship goals," they'd say at dinner parties. And then there was my best friend, Jessica Chin, or Jess as everyone called her. We'd been inseparable since our freshman year at UC Davis, where we were roommates in the dorms. Jess was everything I wasn't. Outgoing where I was reserved, spontaneous where I was careful, a risk-taker who pushed me out of my comfort zone. Jess had been my maid of honor, had thrown me the most incredible baby shower when I was pregnant with the twins, and was practically an aunt to Emma and Jake. She lived just 20 minutes away in downtown Sacramento, worked as a marketing executive for a major hospitality company, and came over for dinner at least twice a week. Our friendship was the kind that romance novels are written about. We finished each other's sentences, shared clothes, knew each other's deepest secrets. When I had those 3 devastating miscarriages before the twins, Jess was the one who held me while I sobbed, who drove me to therapy appointments, who stayed overnight when David had to travel for work because she knew I couldn't bear to be alone. She was also gorgeous. I'd always known that. Petite with long black hair, sparkling dark eyes, and the kind of confidence that drew people to her like a magnet. Men had always been attracted to Jess, but she'd had a string of unsuccessful relationships. "I just haven't found my David," she'd joke, squeezing my hand. "You're so lucky, Patricia. You found your person." Our daily routine was comfortable, predictable. David would leave for work at 7 a.m. sharp after kissing me goodbye and ruffling the twins' hair. I'd drop Emma and Jake at Oakwood Elementary, then spend my morning editing photos from weekend weddings or family sessions. Jess would text me throughout the day, funny memes, work complaints, plans for the weekend. Tuesday and Friday evenings were Jess nights. She'd come over around 6 p.m., usually with a bottle of wine and take out from whatever new restaurant she'd discovered that we'd eat dinner with the family, help the kids with homework, then settle in the living room while David retreated to his home office to catch up on work. Looking back now, I realize how convenient those Tuesday and Friday nights must have been for them. How perfectly they'd orchestrated their deception right under my nose. But that Tuesday in March changed everything. That Tuesday I saw something that shattered my world into a million pieces. It was March 15th. A date now burned into my memory forever. I'd spent the morning at Trader Joe's, shopping for groceries for our weekly family dinner. Jess was coming over as usual, and I'd planned to make her favorite, my grandmother's lasagna recipe that took 3 hours to prepare but was worth every minute. I was excited, actually humming as I drove home with bags of fresh basil, San Marzano tomatoes, and the good Parmesan cheese from the deli counter. The weather was beautiful that day. One of those perfect California spring afternoons where the sky is impossibly blue and the air smells like jasmine from the neighbor's garden. I pulled into our driveway at 2:30 p.m., earlier than usual because Trader Joe's hadn't been crowded. David's car was in the garage. He'd mentioned that morning that he might work from home after lunch to avoid afternoon traffic. The twins wouldn't be home from school until 3:15, giving me time to start the lasagna preparation. I gathered the grocery bags, struggling slightly with the weight, and walked toward our front door. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Familiar laughter coming from our back patio. David's deep chuckle mixed with a higher musical laugh that I recognized immediately. Jess. But Jess wasn't supposed to be here until 6 p.m. We texted that morning and she'd specifically said she'd come by after her conference call with the Portland office ended at 5:30. I set the grocery bags down quietly on the front step and walked around the side of the house, my heart beginning to race for reasons I couldn't quite understand yet. Maybe she'd finished early. Maybe it was a surprise visit. Maybe I turned the corner and saw them. David and Jess were sitting on our outdoor sectional, the one we'd bought last summer and spent weeks deciding on. But they weren't sitting like friends catching up. Jess was curled into David's side, her head on his shoulder, her hand resting on his chest. His arm was wrapped around her, his fingers playing with her hair in a gesture so intimate, so tender, that I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. They were both laughing at something on David's phone, completely absorbed in their own little world. Jess was wearing a sundress I'd never seen before, yellow with tiny white flowers, the kind of dress you wear when you want to look pretty for someone special. I stood there, frozen behind the corner of the house, watching my husband and my best friend in what was clearly not their first intimate moment. The way they moved together was too natural, too comfortable. This wasn't a spontaneous thing. This was familiar territory for them. David said something I couldn't hear and Jess tilted her face up toward his. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought they were going to kiss right there on my patio, using my furniture in the home I'd worked so hard to make perfect for our family. Instead, Jess giggled and playfully slapped his chest. "You're terrible," she said, her voice carrying that flirtatious tone I'd heard her use with men at bars, but never with my husband. "You love it," David replied, and even from my hiding spot I could hear the smugness in his voice, the satisfaction of a man who was getting away with something. That's when I noticed the wine glasses. Two wine glasses on our patio table, half empty, with the bottle of expensive Pinot Noir we'd been saving for our anniversary still sitting between them. My anniversary wine. The wine David and I had bought together during our romantic weekend in Sonoma last fall, carefully chosen and set aside for our upcoming 9th wedding anniversary in June. They were drinking my anniversary wine while having their affair in my backyard. I must have made a sound, a gasp maybe, or a sharp intake of breath, because suddenly David's head turned toward the side of the house. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure they could hear it. "Did you hear something?" David asked. "Probably just Mrs. Henderson's cat again," Jess replied dismissively. "That thing is always getting into everyone's yards." Mrs. Henderson was our 70-year-old neighbor whose orange tabby Muffin was indeed notorious for wandering. But I wasn't Muffin, and I just witnessed my entire life crumbling before my eyes. I crept back to the front of the house, grabbed my grocery bags with shaking hands, and sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to process what I'd just seen. My mind was racing, jumping between denial and rage and a strange hollow numbness. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe they were just... There was no innocent explanation for what I'd witnessed. The body language, the intimacy, the casual way Jess had touched him. This was an affair. And based on how comfortable they looked together, it had been going on for a while. I checked my phone. Jess had texted me 30 minutes ago. "Running errands, see you at 6. Can't wait for girl talk tonight." Girl talk. She was texting me about girl talk while she was cuddled up with my husband on my patio, drinking my anniversary wine. The betrayal hit me in waves. First David. My husband, my partner, the father of my children, the man who'd sworn to love and honor me in front of 200 guests at our wedding. But somehow Jess's betrayal cut even deeper. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This was the woman who'd been my maid of honor, who'd helped me pick out my wedding dress, who'd held my hands during my wedding vows and cried happy tears. This was the woman who'd brought me soup when I had the flu, who'd babysat the twins when David and I went away for our anniversary last year, who'd listened to me complain about David's habit of leaving dishes in the sink. This was the woman who knew every detail of my marriage, every insecurity, every moment of happiness. And she'd used all of that knowledge to betray me in the most devastating way possible. I finally found the courage to get out of my car and go inside, but I used the front door this time, making sure to announce my presence. "I'm home," I called out loudly. I heard quick movement from the back patio, chairs scraping, voices suddenly quieter. By the time I reached the kitchen, David was walking in through the sliding door, looking perfectly normal except for the slight flush in his cheeks. "Hey babe," he said, kissing my cheek as if nothing had happened. How was the grocery store? Fine, I managed, setting the bags on the counter with hands that were still trembling slightly. I thought I heard voices outside. Oh, Jess stopped by early, he said casually, already reaching for his laptop bag. She was in the neighborhood and wanted to surprise you, but I told her you were out shopping. She said she'd come back later as planned. The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly, so effortlessly, that I almost doubted what I'd seen with my own eyes. Almost. That was nice of her, I said, proud of how normal my voice sounded. Yeah, we just chatted for a few minutes about work stuff. Her company is looking into some software solutions that might be relevant for my team. Another lie delivered with the same casual confidence. David grabbed his keys and kissed my forehead. I forgot I have that client call at 3:30. I'll be in the office for a few hours, but I'll be back in time for dinner with Jess. And then he was gone, leaving me standing in my kitchen surrounded by groceries for a lasagna I no longer wanted to make, trying to process the fact that my entire life had just revealed itself to be a carefully constructed lie. That's when I knew. If I was going to survive this, if I was going to protect my children and myself, I needed to be smart. I needed evidence. And I needed a plan. Because if David and Jess thought they could make a fool of me, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. That night, I went through the motions of our normal Tuesday routine with an Oscar-worthy performance. I made the lasagna, lit candles, opened a bottle of wine, not the anniversary wine, which was apparently already half consumed, and welcomed Jess at 6 p.m. with the same warm hug I'd given her 1,000 times before. Patricia, she squealed, squeezing me tight. I missed you. How was your day? Oh, you know, the usual, I replied, watching her face carefully for any sign of guilt or nervousness. There was none. If anything, she seemed more animated than usual, practically glowing with some internal excitement that made me want to scream. David emerged from his office right on cue, kissing me hello and giving Jess a casual wave. Hey Jess. How was work? Brutal but good, she said, settling into her usual spot on our couch. That Portland conference call ran long, but we finally got approval for the Q2 marketing campaign. I watched them during dinner, analyzing every glance, every word, every interaction with the intensity of a CIA operative. They were good, I had to give them that. They barely looked at each other directly, never touched except for the brief moment when they both reached for the salt and their fingers brushed. David even complained about work stress in a way that seemed genuine, and Jess offered sympathy that sounded completely authentic. But I knew what I'd seen. And more importantly, I was starting to notice things I'd previously overlooked. Like how Jess always seemed to know David's work schedule better than I did. Oh, doesn't David have that big presentation Thursday? She'd ask, and I'd realize I had no idea about any presentation. Or how David's phone had started facing down during dinner, when it used to sit casually on the table. How he'd begun taking calls in his office with the door closed, explaining it was confidential work stuff. How Jess had started asking fewer questions about David during our girl talks, when she used to be interested in every detail of our marriage. How are things with you and David? Had been her standard question for years. Now she barely mentioned him. After dinner, while David cleaned up in the kitchen, Jess and I settled in the living room with wine. This was usually my favorite part of our Tuesday nights. Just the two of us, catching up on everything. So, Jess said, curling her legs under her on the couch. Tell me about this new client. The one with the destination wedding in Hawaii. We talked about work, about the kids, about her latest dating disasters. She told me about a guy she'd met on a dating app who'd turned out to be married, rolling her eyes dramatically. Can you believe it? I mean, who does that? What kind of person lies about being married? The irony was so thick I nearly choked on my wine. Around 9 p.m., Jess announced she should head home. Early meeting tomorrow, she explained, gathering her purse. She hugged me goodbye, and for just a moment, I searched her face for any sign of remorse, any crack in her performance. Nothing. Love you, girl, she said, the same words she'd said to me hundreds of times over the years. Love you too, I replied automatically, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. After she left, I helped David finish cleaning up. Nice night, he said, loading the dishwasher. Jess seemed in good spirits. Yeah, I agreed. She did. That night, after David fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I needed proof. Real, undeniable evidence that couldn't be explained away, or just what I'd seen would accomplish nothing. They'd deny it, gaslight me, make me question my own sanity. I'd watched enough true crime documentaries to know that cheaters were experts at manipulation. They'd turn it around on me, say I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things. They might even use my past struggles with anxiety against me. David knew I'd been on medication for postpartum depression after the twins were born. No, I needed to be smarter than that. The next morning, after David left for work and I dropped the kids at school, I did something I never thought I'd do in a million years. I drove to Best Buy and purchased a small, discreet security camera system. Setting up a home security system, I told the teenage sales associate, my voice steady despite the way my hands were shaking. I want to be able to monitor the house when we're away. He was helpful, explaining the different options, the smartphone apps, how to set up cloud storage for the recordings. I chose a system with 4 small cameras. One for the living room, one for the kitchen, one for the front door, and one for the back patio. These are great, he assured me. Super discreet, excellent video quality, and you can access the feed from anywhere using your phone. I paid cash, something I never did, but I didn't want any trace of this purchase on our shared credit card statements. Then I drove home and spent the next 3 hours carefully installing the cameras in spots where they'd be virtually invisible but would capture everything I needed to see. The living room camera went behind a photo frame on the bookshelf. The kitchen camera was tucked between cookbooks. The front door camera was hidden in the artificial plant I'd bought months ago but never really liked. And the patio camera was positioned in the eaves above our outdoor dining set. I tested each one using the app on my phone, adjusting angles until I had perfect views of all the key areas. Then I created a separate email account, pertisham.photography2024@gmail.com, and linked it to the camera system so the recordings wouldn't appear in my regular email. It felt surreal setting up surveillance in my own home to catch my own husband cheating with my own best friend. But it also felt necessary. Empowering even. For the first time since Tuesday afternoon, I felt like I had some control over my situation. That evening, David came home with flowers, a mixed bouquet of tulips and daffodils from the grocery store florist section. Just because, he said, kissing me softly. I love you, Patricia. I love you too, I replied, accepting the flowers and arranging them in a vase, wondering if guilt had prompted this gesture or if it was just another part of his performance. The next few days passed in a strange sort of suspended animation. I went through my normal routine: school drop-offs, client meetings, editing sessions, dinner preparation, while secretly checking the camera feeds on my phone throughout the day. Nothing happened Wednesday. David worked late at the office, coming home at 8 p.m. looking genuinely tired. We watched Netflix together after the kids went to bed and everything felt almost normal. Thursday was the same. Normal husband, normal routine, normal family dinner. I started to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe they really had just been friends catching up. Maybe I was losing my mind, becoming one of those paranoid wives who sees threats where none exist. But then Friday arrived, and with it, the evidence I'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification button. Friday morning started like any other. David kissed me goodbye at 7 a.m., mentioning he had back-to-back meetings all day and might be home late. Don't wait up if I'm not back by 9, he said. This client presentation is make or break for the quarter. I dropped the twins at school, then drove to my studio space for a portrait session with the Johnson family. Their annual family photos that they do every spring since their youngest was born. It should have been a pleasant distraction, but I found myself checking my phone constantly, monitoring the camera feeds. At 11:30 a.m., while I was adjusting lighting for the family photos, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the front door camera. I glanced at the screen and saw David's car pulling into our driveway. That was strange. He was supposed to be in back-to-back meetings all day. Maybe he'd forgotten something at home. I watched as David got out of his car and walked to the front door, but instead of going inside, he paused and looked around the neighborhood carefully. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. The conversation was brief, maybe 30 seconds. Then he went inside, but he came back out just 5 minutes later carrying what looked like a bottle of wine and a small bag from Victoria's Secret that I definitely hadn't seen before. My blood turned to ice. David put the items in his car and drove away. But instead of heading toward downtown Sacramento where his office was located, he turned left onto Maple Street, the direction of the Marriott Hotel near the mall. I couldn't concentrate on the photo session after that. Somehow I made it through the next hour, taking the Johnson family's portraits on autopilot while my mind raced with horrible possibilities. What was in that Victoria's Secret bag? Who was he meeting at a hotel in the middle of a workday? When the session ended, I drove home in a daze. The house felt different somehow, like a crime scene that looked normal on the surface but held terrible secrets. I walked through each room trying to figure out what David had come back for. In our bedroom, I noticed that his cologne was missing from the dresser. The expensive Tom Ford cologne I'd bought him for Christmas. In the bathroom, his good aftershave was gone too. In the kitchen, I checked our wine rack. He'd taken the bottle of Caymus Cabernet we'd been saving for a special occasion. Not as special as the anniversary wine he'd shared with Jess on Tuesday, but still a $100 bottle that we'd bought during our last trip to Napa. A special occasion. Like a romantic afternoon at a hotel with his mistress. I was still standing in the kitchen staring at the empty spot in our wine rack, when my phone buzzed with a text from Jess. "Hey babe. Any chance we could push dinner to 7 tonight? Got pulled into an emergency strategy session that's running long. Work is crazy today." An emergency strategy session. On the same day my husband had mysteriously left work for a hotel rendezvous with wine and lingerie. I texted back, "Of course. No problem at all. See you at 7. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and opened the camera app on my phone, scrolling back through the day's recordings. I watched David's mysterious return trip 3 times, screenshotting the image of him carrying the Victoria's Secret bag to his car. That's when I noticed something else in the recording that I'd missed in real time. Just before David made his phone call in the driveway, another car had driven slowly past our house. A white Honda Accord, Jess's car. She'd been casing the neighborhood, making sure the coast was clear before David came out. They were coordinating. Planning. This wasn't some spontaneous affair. This was a calculated, ongoing relationship with surveillance and alibis and secret hotel meetings. I felt something shift inside me at that realization. The hurt and shock began to transform into something harder, sharper, bigger. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger that makes you scream and throw things, but a cold, calculating fury that wanted justice. If they could plan and scheme and coordinate their betrayal, then I could plan and scheme and coordinate their exposure. I spent the afternoon researching. Private investigators, divorce lawyers, hidden camera placement, phone tracking apps. I went down a rabbit hole of information about catching cheating spouses. I learned about GPS trackers, about recovering deleted text messages, about the legal implications of recording conversations in California. By the time I picked up the twins from school, I had a plan. That evening, when Jess arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, I was ready for her. "Sorry about the schedule change," she said, hugging me as she came through the door. "You know how it is with these last-minute client emergencies." "Of course," I replied smoothly. "How did your emergency strategy session go?" "Oh, you know, the usual corporate drama," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "But we got it sorted out. Sometimes you just have to put in the extra hours to keep the clients happy." David emerged from his office, and I watched carefully as he and Jess greeted each other. A casual, "Hey Jess," and "Hi David," nothing that would seem unusual to an outside observer. But I caught the way their eyes lingered on each other for just a fraction too long, the way Jess's smile seemed a little too bright. During dinner, I played the perfect hostess, asking about their days, sharing funny stories about the twins, discussing weekend plans. All while mentally cataloging every suspicious glance, every carefully neutral interaction. "This lasagna is incredible as always," Jess said, twirling pasta on her fork. "You have to give me the recipe someday." "It's my grandmother's," I replied. "A family secret passed down through generations." The irony wasn't lost on me. Family secrets. If only she knew what secrets I was beginning to uncover. After dinner, David announced he had more work to catch up on and disappeared into his office. Jess and I moved to the living room with wine. A different bottle this time, since she and David had apparently finished our anniversary wine earlier in the week. "So," Jess said, settling into her corner of the couch, "how are things with you and David? You two seem really happy." The question hit me like a slap. This woman, who'd spent the afternoon in a hotel room with my husband, was asking me about my marriage with what appeared to be genuine interest. "We're good," I said carefully. "Really good, actually. Strong as ever." "That's wonderful," Jess replied, and I swear she looked almost disappointed. You're so lucky, Patricia. I mean it. David is one of the good ones. I wanted to throw my wine in her face. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her how she could sit in my living room and lie to my face with such casual cruelty. Instead, I smiled and nodded. He really is, I agreed. I trust him completely. Jess shifted uncomfortably, the first crack in her facade I'd seen all evening. We spent the next hour talking about everything except the elephant in the room. Her work, my photography business, plans for Emma and Jake's upcoming 7th birthday party. Normal best friend conversation that felt like the most surreal experience of my life. When Jess left at 9:30, she hugged me extra tight. I'm so glad we do this, she said. These nights mean everything to me. You mean everything to me. You too, I managed, wondering how someone could be such a gifted liar. After she left, I sat in my living room and watched the evening's recordings on my phone. The camera had captured everything. Their careful avoidance of each other, the way David had tensed when Jess asked about our marriage, the uncomfortable shift in Jess's body language when I mentioned trusting David completely. But more importantly, the audio was crystal clear. Every word, every laugh, every lie had been recorded in perfect quality. I was building a case piece by piece, and I was just getting started. The weekend passed quietly. David was attentive, even romantic. We went out for dinner Saturday night while my mom watched the twins, and he seemed like the devoted husband I'd married. Sunday was family day. Pancakes, the kids' soccer games, a movie night at home. If I hadn't seen what I'd seen, hadn't felt that chill of recognition when I witnessed their intimacy, I might have convinced myself I was imagining things. But Monday brought new evidence that erased any remaining doubt. Monday morning, David left for work at his usual time, but instead of his normal routine, he paused in our bedroom doorway. I might have to stay late again tonight, he said. This Q2 project is really heating up. Q2 project. The same project Jess had mentioned during her emergency strategy session on Friday. No problem, I said from bed, pretending to be half asleep. I'll save you some dinner. After dropping the twins at school, I decided to do some reconnaissance of my own. Instead of going straight home, I drove to David's office building in downtown Sacramento. I parked across the street with a clear view of the entrance and settled in to wait. At 9:47 a.m. I watched David walk into the building just like always. So far so normal. But at 11:15 a.m. I saw him come back out. He looked around carefully, then got in his car and drove away, in the opposite direction from our house. I followed him, staying far enough back that he wouldn't notice me but close enough to see where he was going. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely focus on driving. David drove straight to the Marriott near Arden Fair Mall, the same direction he'd headed on Friday. He parked in the back of the lot, away from the main entrance, and walked into the hotel like he'd done it 100 times before. I parked in a spot where I could watch the entrance and waited. 23 minutes later, Jess's white Honda Accord pulled into the same parking lot. I watched my best friend get out of her car, check her appearance in the side mirror, and walk into the same hotel where my husband was waiting for her. The piece of my heart that had been hanging on by a thread finally snapped. I sat in that parking lot for 2 hours taking photos of their cars, screenshots of the timestamps, building my evidence file. At 1:47 p.m., they emerged from the hotel separately. David first, looking satisfied and relaxed, then Jess 10 minutes later, checking her phone as she walked to her car. They'd perfected their system. Separate arrivals, separate departures, probably even separate rooms booked under different names to avoid any paper trail that connected them. But they hadn't counted on me. I followed David back to his office building, watched him go inside, then drove home in a haze of rage and determination. I had photos, I had timelines, I had proof that they were meeting secretly while lying to me about their whereabouts. But I wanted more. I wanted everything. That afternoon, I called my younger brother Marcus in Portland. Marcus was 3 years younger than me, a former military police officer who now worked in cybersecurity. If anyone could help me gather digital evidence, it was him. Patricia, he answered on the second ring. This is a surprise. What's up, sis? Marcus, I said, and then stopped, not sure how to begin. How do you tell your little brother that your life is falling apart? Hey, are you okay? You sound weird. I think David is cheating on me, I said in a rush. With Jess. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Marcus? Are you there? I'm here, he said, and his voice had gone flat and dangerous. Tell me everything. I told him about Tuesday afternoon, about the hotel, about all the little signs I'd been missing. Marcus listened without interruption, and I could practically hear him processing information like the trained investigator he used to be. Okay, he said finally. First things first, you did good getting those cameras. But we need more. We need their communications. How? Do you have access to David's laptop? His computer passwords. We share a computer in the home office, I said. And I know his passwords for most things. He's not very creative. He uses variations of Emma and Jake's birthdays for everything. Perfect. What about phone records? Do you have access to your cell phone account online? Yes, we're on a family plan. I can see all the usage. Even better. Patricia, I'm going to walk you through some things, but I need you to promise me you'll be careful. If David is cheating and if he finds out you're investigating, things could get complicated fast. What do you mean, complicated? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Money, custody, assets. When marriages end badly, especially when one person has been planning and the other gets caught off guard, the person doing the planning usually has an advantage. We need to make sure you're protected. I hadn't even thought about divorce yet. I'd been so focused on gathering evidence of the affair that I hadn't considered what came next. But Marcus was right. I needed to think several steps ahead. What should I do? Tonight, after David goes to sleep, check his computer. Look for unusual files, different browsers, unfamiliar email accounts. Check the browsing history. Look for dating apps, hotel bookings, anything suspicious. Okay. Also, log into your phone account and print out the last 3 months of call and text records for both David's phone and yours. Look for patterns. Numbers he's calling that you don't recognize, especially if he's calling them at weird times. And then we see what we find. But Patricia, and this is important, don't confront them yet. No matter what you discover, don't let them know you're onto them. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage right now. That night, I waited until David was deeply asleep. He was a heavy sleeper, always had been, then crept out to the home office. My hands were shaking as I opened his laptop and typed in his password. Jake and Emma 2018. The computer opened to his usual desktop, but when I checked his browsing history, I found that it had been cleared. Completely. Not just the past few days, but everything going back months. David had never cleared his browsing history in all the years we'd been together. He barely knew how to clear browsing history. Someone had taught him. I checked his downloads folder and found it empty too. His email showed only work-related messages and a few subscriptions. Nothing personal, nothing suspicious. But then I remembered something Marcus had told me years ago when he was investigating fraud cases in the military. People always think they're covering their tracks, but they forget about the places they don't think to look. I opened David's Chrome browser and checked his saved passwords. Bingo. There it was. A Gmail account I'd never seen before. davidm.consulting2024@gmail.com. The password was saved in his browser. Another variation of the kids' birthdays. My hands were trembling as I logged into this secret email account. The inbox was mostly empty, but the sent folder told a different story entirely. Email after email to an address I recognized immediately. jachin.marketing@gmail.com. Jess's personal email. The subject lines made me nauseous. Can't wait for tomorrow. Missing you already. Tuesday felt like a dream. Room 237 is perfect. I clicked on the most recent email sent just that afternoon. Just this morning was incredible. I keep thinking about the way you looked in that yellow dress. The same one you wore to our first hotel meeting. You're so beautiful it hurts. I hate having to pretend we're just friends when you come over. I hate watching you hug Patricia, knowing that in a few hours you'll be in my arms instead. But soon we won't have to hide anymore. Can't wait for Friday. Same time, same place. I love you. D. I had to read it 3 times before it sank in. This wasn't some casual fling or moment of weakness. David was in love with Jess. He was planning a future with her that apparently didn't include me. I scrolled through more emails, each one worse than the last. Patricia suspects something. She's been asking more questions about my schedule. We need to be more careful. Sent 2 weeks ago. I dream about the day we can be together openly. I dream about taking you on real dates, not hiding in hotel rooms. My love. Sent last month. She's planning Emma and Jake's birthday party for next month. It's going to be hard to pretend to be happy family man when all I want is to be with you. Sent 3 weeks ago. The birthday party email hit me like a physical blow. My children's birthday party, an event I'd been planning for months, complete with bouncy castles and custom decorations. And David was thinking about how difficult it would be to fake happiness for our family. But the worst email was in a subfolder labeled Future Plans. I talked to Jenkins about the Seattle position. It would be perfect. New city, fresh start, no one who knows our history. Patricia would never have to know the real reason for the move. We could start over, just the 3 of us. 3 of us. David, Jessant, not me. Not Emma and Jake. I realized with growing horror that they weren't just having an affair. They were planning my replacement. David was looking into job transfers that would allow him to move away with Jess, probably taking my children with him, while I remained completely unaware of their plan. I took screenshots of everything, forwarding them to my secret email account. Then I checked the phone records Marcus had suggested. The Verizon account showed what I expected. Dozens of calls between David's phone and a number I didn't recognize. But when I cross-referenced it with Jess's contact information in my phone, it matched perfectly. They'd been calling each other constantly, sometimes for hours at a time, always when I was out of the house or asleep. The text message records were even more damning. Hundreds of messages between them over the past 4 months, including several sent while David and I were having dinner together or while Jess was visiting our house. I found one particularly sickening exchange from the previous Tuesday, while David and I were watching a movie together on the couch. David, she's sitting right next to me and has no idea. Wish it was you instead. Just soon, baby. Soon we won't have to pretend anymore. David, I love you so much it's killing me to wait. Just love you too. Dream about me tonight. They'd been sexting while I was cuddled up next to my husband, watching a romantic comedy and sharing a bowl of popcorn. By 2 a.m., I had assembled a comprehensive file of evidence. Photos, emails, phone records, hotel receipts I'd found in David's car when I checked it after he fell asleep. Even a timeline of their meetings cross-referenced with their lies to me about work emergencies and schedule changes. I also discovered that David had opened a separate bank account 3 months ago, something he'd never mentioned to me. He'd been moving money into it gradually, small amounts that wouldn't be noticed in our regular budget reviews. He was financing their affair and planning his exit strategy, all while kissing me goodnight and helping our children with their homework. I wanted to wake him up right then and confront him with everything I'd found. I wanted to call Jess and scream at her until my voice gave out. I wanted to drive to her apartment and bang on her door until the whole building knew what kind of person she really was. Instead, I went back to bed and lay there in the dark next to my cheating husband, planning my next move. Because I'd realized something important in those long hours of investigation. I wasn't just the victim in this story anymore. I was about to become the author of their consequences. The next morning, I called in sick to my photo session and drove to downtown Sacramento to meet with Janet Morrison, a divorce attorney my research had indicated was both ruthless and discreet. I'd made the appointment under my maiden name, paying cash for the consultation, leaving no digital trail that could be traced back to me. Janet's office was on the 15th floor of a sleek glass building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Sacramento River. She was a woman in her early 50s with silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her mahogany desk. "I understand you have a delicate situation." I laid out everything, the evidence, the timeline, the secret bank account, their apparent plans to relocate to Seattle. Janet listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me carefully. "You've been thorough," she said. "Impressively so. In 23 years of practicing family law, I've rarely seen a spouse gather this much concrete evidence before their first consultation." "I needed to be sure," I said. "Oh, you can be sure. What you've described is a clear case of adultery with financial planning that suggests premeditation to dissolve the marriage. The secret bank account is particularly concerning. It indicates financial deception that could impact property division." Janet opened a file and began writing. "California is a no-fault divorce state, which means the adultery itself won't impact the divorce proceedings. However, the financial deception absolutely will. Any money he's moved into secret accounts will be considered marital property subject to division." "What about custody?" Adultery doesn't typically impact custody arrangements unless it can be proven that the affair is somehow harmful to the children's well-being. However, the fact that he's planning to relocate without discussing it with you could be relevant. Janet leaned forward, her expression serious. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to ask you something important. What outcome are you hoping for here? It was a good question. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Protection for my children? All of the above. I want to make sure my children and I are protected, I said finally. And I want them to face consequences for what they've done. Legal consequences or other consequences? I met her sharp gaze steadily. All consequences they deserve. Janet smiled, a small, knowing smile that told me she'd handled cases like this before. In that case, let me suggest a strategy that will protect your interests while also ensuring maximum impact. She outlined a plan that was both brilliant and devastating. First, I would continue gathering evidence for another month, building an even stronger case. Second, I would quietly secure my own finances, opening accounts in my name only, transferring money from our joint savings account gradually so David wouldn't notice. How much of our joint savings can I move? I asked. In California, you're entitled to 50% of all marital assets. But I'd recommend moving smaller amounts over time rather than half all at once. We don't want to tip him off. Third, and most importantly, I would document everything about their affair in a way that could be used not just in divorce proceedings, but in the court of public opinion. You mentioned they're both concerned about their professional reputations? Janet asked. Very much so. David's company has a strict ethics policy about workplace relationships and personal conduct. And Jess works in marketing for a hospitality company that handles high-profile corporate accounts. They both depend on their professional images. Then you have leverage beyond just the legal system, Janet said. Public exposure of an affair, particularly one that involves elaborate deception and financial misconduct, can have significant professional consequences. You're suggesting I expose them publicly? I'm suggesting you consider all your options. A cheating spouse who's been planning to abandon his family doesn't deserve your discretion or protection. Janet gave me homework. Continue monitoring and recording, document every lie, every secret meeting, every financial transaction. Create a timeline that would be impossible to deny or explain away. And Mrs. Mitchell, she said as I prepared to leave, be careful. When people realize their secrets are exposed, they don't always react rationally. I drove home with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in days. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt like I was the one in control. That afternoon, I opened my own checking account at a different bank, depositing the $3,000 I kept in my photography business account. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I also researched apartment rentals in nearby Elk Grove, looking for a 2-bedroom place where the twins and I could start over if necessary. When David came home that evening, on time for once, I was ready with dinner and a smile. How was your day? I asked, serving him a plate of the pork chops he loved. Productive, he said. Really productive, actually. The Q2 project is coming together nicely. That's wonderful. You've been working so hard on it. Yeah, it's been intense. Lots of coordination with different teams, you know? Different teams. Was that what he was calling his affair with Jess now? Well, I'm proud of you, I said, kissing his cheek. You're so dedicated. That night, after David fell asleep, I checked the camera feeds from the day and discovered something that made my blood run cold. At 2:30 p.m., while I was meeting with Janet Morrison, Jess had come to our house and I watched the recording with growing horror as she let herself in with the spare key we'd given her years ago. The key that was supposed to be for emergencies only. She'd walked through our house like she owned it, going upstairs to our bedroom, opening drawers, looking through my jewelry box. She'd tried on my earrings. My wedding earrings, the pearl drops that had been my grandmother's, that I'd worn on my wedding day when she stood beside me as my maid of honor. Then she'd gone into David's closet and selected one of his dress shirts, the blue one I'd bought him for our anniversary last year. She'd held it to her face, breathing in his scent, then folded it carefully and put it in her purse. But the worst part came when she went back downstairs to our living room. She'd sat on our couch, the same couch where we'd had our Tuesday and Friday night conversations for years, and made a phone call. The hidden camera picked up every word. "It's me," she'd said when someone answered. "I'm at their house." "No, she's out. She had some appointment this afternoon. I know it feels weird being here without her knowing. The plan is still on track for next month. He's going to tell her about the Seattle job opportunity this weekend. No, she won't suspect anything. Pertishi trusts me completely. He trusts both of us completely. That's what makes this so easy. There was a pause while the person on the other end spoke. I know it seems cruel, but David's happiness matters more than her feelings. And honestly, she'll be better off without him. She's been holding him back for years with her anxiety and her need for everything to be perfect and safe. She'll find someone more suited to her personality eventually. Another pause. The kids will adjust. Kids always do. And we'll make sure they can visit Patricia whenever they want. We're not monsters. We're just following our hearts. I had to stop the recording. I couldn't listen to any more of my best friend explaining to someone how easy it was to destroy my life because I trusted them completely. But I forced myself to watch the rest. After the phone call, Jess had walked around my house like she was already planning how to redecorate it. She'd opened kitchen cabinets, examined my family photos, even sat at my piano and played a few bars of the song David and I had danced to at our wedding. Then she'd taken a selfie on my couch and posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Best friend time at Patricia's house. Love this woman so much." The post had 12 likes and 3 comments, including one from my own mother. "You girls are so sweet together." The level of calculated cruelty was breathtaking. Jess hadn't just been having an affair with my husband. She'd been systematically infiltrating and studying my life, preparing to step into it once I was removed from the picture. I spent the rest of the night going through everything I'd recorded, building a comprehensive timeline of their deception. The pattern was clear. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The affair wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a deliberate campaign to steal my life. By morning I had a plan of my own. The next day was Saturday, which meant family time. David made his famous pancakes while I helped the twins get ready for Jake's soccer game. We looked like the perfect American family. Mom, Dad, 2 beautiful kids. Weekend plans that revolved around youth sports and family activities. "Patricia," David said as he flipped pancakes, "I've been meaning to talk to you about something exciting." My stomach clenched. "Oh, there's a possibility of a promotion at work. It would mean relocating to Seattle, but it's a significant opportunity. Better salary, stock options, the works." Here it was. The Seattle job that Jess had mentioned in her phone call. The setup for their escape plan. "Seattle," I said, injecting just the right amount of surprise into my voice. "That's so far from my family. From my business." "I know it's a big change," David said, sliding pancakes onto plates. "But think about it. New adventures, better schools for the kids, a chance to really grow your photography business in a bigger market. Have you applied for it already?" "It's more of an internal opportunity," he said, avoiding my eyes. "My boss mentioned it might be opening up soon." Another lie. I'd spent an hour the night before researching David's company's website and LinkedIn pages. There were no Seattle positions posted, no announcements about expansion, nothing that would explain this sudden job opportunity. "Well," I said carefully, "it's definitely something to think about." "Exactly. No rush to decide. Just wanted to plant the seed." Plant the seed. Like he was doing me a favor by involving me in the decision to relocate for his affair at Jake's soccer game. I sat in the bleachers watching my son run around the field while mentally planning my counteroffensive. Other parents chatted around me about carpools and summer camp plans, normal suburban concerns that felt surreal given what I was dealing with. "Patricia." I turned to see Linda Chin, Jess's older sister, climbing the bleachers toward me. Linda was a nurse at Sutter General, married with 3 kids of her own, and one of the few people who knew both Jess and me well. "Linda, how are you?" I said, genuinely happy to see her. Linda had always been the more grounded Chin sister, the responsible one who kept Jess out of trouble when they were younger. Good. Kids keeping me busy as always." She settled next to me on the bleacher. "How's Jess? I feel like I barely see her anymore. Every time I call, she's either working late or has plans with some new guy she won't tell me about." My heart skipped. "New guy?" "Yeah, she's been super secretive about it. Won't bring him to family dinners, won't even tell me his name. Just says she's seeing someone, and that it's complicated. You know how she gets about relationships." Linda had no idea she was giving me crucial information. Jess had been keeping their affair secret even from her own family, which meant she knew exactly how wrong it was. She hasn't mentioned anyone new to me either, I said, which was technically true. Weird, right? Usually she tells you everything. She was just saying last week how you're the only person who really understands her. I nearly choked. She said that. Yeah, at my mom's birthday dinner. She went on and on about how grateful she is for your friendship, how you're like the sister she never had, how she can't imagine her life without you. Linda shook her head. I mean, she has me, but whatever. You know how dramatic Jess can be. The sister she never had. While planning to steal my husband and destroy my family. After the game, I made a decision. I needed allies, and Linda might be the key to getting Jess's own family to see her true character. Linda, I said as we walked to our cars, can I ask you something? In confidence. Of course. If Jess was doing something really hurtful to someone she claimed to care about, would you want to know? Linda stopped walking and turned to face me fully. Patricia, what's going on? I can't give you details yet, I said carefully. But I might need to share some difficult information with you soon. Information about Jess that's going to be hard to hear. Is she in trouble? Is she okay? She's fine. But she's making choices that are going to hurt a lot of people. Including herself. Linda studied my face with the sharp attention of someone trained to read people in crisis. Does this have to do with this mysterious boyfriend? It might. Patricia, if my sister is hurting you somehow, I'll call you soon, I interrupted. When I have all the facts. Just be prepared for some difficult news, okay? Linda nodded slowly. Whatever's going on, I'm here for you. You know that, right? Jess is my sister and I love her, but you've been part of our family for years too. Driving home, I felt a surge of gratitude for Linda's words. When this all came out, and it would come out soon, it would be helpful to have someone in Jess's family who understood that I wasn't the villain in this story. That afternoon, while David took the twins to the park, I called my own family. First my mother, then my sister Rachel in San Francisco, then Marcus again in Portland. I didn't give them full details yet, but I prepared them for what was coming. Mom, I said, I need you to know that David and I are having some serious problems. I can't explain everything right now, but I want you to be prepared for the possibility that the twins and I might need to stay with you for a while. My mother, bless her, didn't ask for details. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need. The guest room is always ready for you and my grandbabies. Rachel was more direct. Patricia, what the hell is going on? You sound scared. I'm not scared, I said and realized it was true. I'm angry. Really angry. And I'm about to do something about it. Do you need me to come down there? Not yet. But soon maybe. I'll call you when I know more. Marcus was the most helpful. I've been thinking about your situation, he said. Have you considered hiring a private investigator? Someone who can gather evidence professionally, maybe catch them in the act. I think I've caught them in the act enough times already. But not with professional documentation. Patricia, if this goes to court, amateur photos and recordings might not carry as much weight as you think. A PI could get evidence that's legally bulletproof. He gave me the name of someone in Sacramento, Mike Torres. A former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. Tell him I referred you. He owes me a favor from a case we worked together a few years ago. That evening, David was unusually attentive. He suggested we order takeout instead of cooking, opened a bottle of wine, put on music while we ate dinner with the twins. After Emma and Jake went to bed, he pulled me onto the couch and started kissing my neck. I love you so much, Patricia, he whispered. You know that, right? Of course, I replied, fighting the urge to push him away. I love you too. We made love that night for the first time in weeks, and the whole time I was thinking about the emails I'd read about him writing to Jess about missing her while lying in bed next to me. It felt like the ultimate violation. Not just my body but my trust, my memories, my sense of reality. Afterward, while David slept, I went to the bathroom and cried silently for 10 minutes. Not just for the marriage that was ending, but for the friend I'd lost, for the life I'd thought I was living, for the innocence my children were about to lose when their family exploded. But I only allowed myself those 10 minutes. Because tomorrow I was going to start fighting back. Monday morning, I met Mike Torres at a coffee shop in Midtown Sacramento, far enough from my usual haunts that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Mike was a stocky man in his late 40s with graying hair and the kind of eyes that missed nothing. Exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd spent 15 years as a detective. "Marcus told me you might need some help," he said, settling into the booth across from me with a cup of black coffee. "Why don't you tell me what's going on?" I laid out the whole story again, showing him photos and documentation on my phone. Mike listened with the patient attention of someone who'd heard variations of this story many times before. "How long do you think this has been going on?" he asked when I finished. "Based on the emails I found, at least 4 months. But honestly, looking back at their behavior, maybe longer. Maybe much longer." Mike nodded. "In my experience, affairs don't just start. They build over time. There's usually an emotional connection that develops before it becomes physical." The thought that David and Jess might have been emotionally involved for years while I remained oblivious was almost more painful than the physical affair. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "I need to observe them in action. Follow them to their meetings, document their behavior, get footage that clearly shows the nature of their relationship. What you've gathered is excellent background information, but for legal purposes, we need irrefutable proof." "How long will that take?" "Based on what you've told me about their schedule, probably 2 weeks. Maybe less if they stick to their pattern of meeting twice a week." Mike quoted me his rates: "Expensive but worth it for peace of mind." I paid him a retainer from my photography business account and scheduled our next meeting for the following week. "One more thing," Mike said as we prepared to leave. "Are you planning to confront them directly at some point?" "Eventually. When you do, make sure you're in a safe place with witnesses. People don't always react well to being exposed, especially when they've put a lot of effort into maintaining their deception." That afternoon, I called my sister Rachel in San Francisco. "I need a favor," I said without preamble. "Name it." "I need you to come down for Emma and Jake's birthday party next month. And I need you to bring your camera." Rachel was a freelance videographer who specialized in corporate events and weddings. She had professional equipment and an eye for capturing exactly the right moments. "You want me to film the party?" "I want you to film everything," I said. "And Rachel, there's going to be some drama. I need it documented." "Patricia, you're scaring me." "What kind of drama?" "The kind that's going to change our family forever. But I promise you we're going to be okay. Better than okay." "Do you need me to come down sooner?" "Not yet. But soon. I'll call you when it's time." That week, I continued my normal routine while secretly building my case. I hired a forensic accountant recommended by Janet Morrison to analyze our financial records and track David's secret transfers. I researched the Seattle job market and discovered that David's company had no offices or partnerships in the Pacific Northwest. His promotion opportunity was completely fabricated. I also started making copies of everything important: tax returns, insurance policies, property deeds, bank statements, the kids' birth certificates, and medical records. I stored everything in a safety deposit box at my new bank, creating a paper trail that would protect me if David tried to hide or destroy financial documents. Mike Torres called me Thursday with his first report. "I followed your husband yesterday afternoon. He left his office at 11:30 a.m. and drove to the Marriott. Your friend arrived 15 minutes later. They spent 2.5 hours in room 237 before leaving separately. Room 237. The same room number David had mentioned in his email to Jess. I have photos of them entering and leaving the hotel," Mike continued. "And I managed to get close enough to photograph them through the window of the hotel restaurant when they had lunch together before going upstairs. The body language is unmistakably intimate." "What about today?" "Today's Friday, right? According to your timeline, that's usually when she comes to your house in the evening." "Yes, she'll be here at 6. I'll be watching. If they interact in any way that seems suspicious, I'll document it." That Friday evening, Jess arrived right on schedule with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. She seemed more excited than usual, talking rapidly about work, about weekend plans, about a new meditation class she wanted us to try together. "You should come with me," she said, refilling our wine glasses. "It's this amazing instructor who focuses on manifesting your dreams and releasing negative energy from past relationships." Releasing negative energy from past relationships. Was she actually suggesting I attend a class about letting go of relationships while she was actively destroying mine? "Sounds interesting," I said neutrally. "It really is. The instructor talks about how sometimes we hold on to things that aren't serving us anymore, you know? Like how sometimes we need to be brave enough to pursue what makes us truly happy, even if it means disappointing people. I stared at her, wondering if she was actually trying to prepare me for my own abandonment, coaching me to accept my fate with grace and spiritual enlightenment. Jess, I said slowly, do you believe in karma? She looked startled by the question. Karma? I guess so. Why? I just think it's interesting how the universe has a way of giving people exactly what they deserve, you know? What goes around comes around. Jess shifted uncomfortably. That's kind of a dark way to look at it. Is it? I think it's hopeful. It means that people who do good things get good things back. And people who do terrible things. I let the sentence hang in the air. People make mistakes, Patricia. People are human. I think the universe is more forgiving than that. Maybe, I said, taking a sip of wine. I guess we'll find out. The conversation moved on to safer topics, but I could see that I'd rattled her. Good. Let her wonder what I meant. Let her start to worry. That night after Jess left, Mike Torres called with his report. Interesting evening, he said. Your friend didn't go straight home after leaving your house. She drove to the Starbucks on Fair Oaks Boulevard and made a phone call from her car. The call lasted 17 minutes. After that, she drove to your husband's office building. His office. At 10 p.m. on a Friday. That's what I thought. But he was there waiting for her in the parking lot. I have photos of them together. Kissing, embracing, the works. They talked for about 20 minutes, then both drove to her apartment complex. He didn't come home until almost midnight, I said, remembering how David had crept into bed trying not to wake me, smelling like Jess's perfume. Mrs. Mitchell, Mike said, I've been doing this for 12 years and I've never seen an affair this elaborate. The level of planning, the coordination, the way they're manipulating your schedule to maximize their time together. This is sophisticated. What does that mean for me? It means they're not going to give up easily when you expose them. People who put this much effort into an affair usually have convinced themselves they're justified somehow. They've built a whole narrative about how their love is more important than the damage they're causing. That weekend I made another decision. I was tired of being reactive, tired of just gathering evidence and waiting for them to make their next move. It was time to start setting some traps of my own. The first trap was simple but effective. On Monday, I called Jess at work and asked if she wanted to join me for a spa day the following Saturday. Just the two of us, I said. We haven't had proper girl time in ages. That sounds amazing, Jess said, and I could hear the genuine enthusiasm in her voice. I've been so stressed with work lately. A spa day is exactly what I need. Perfect. I'll book us massages at the Sanctuary Spa in Granite Bay. They have that package we talked about trying. You're the best, Patricia. Seriously, what would I do without you? What would you do without me? You're about to find out. After booking the spa appointment, I called the sanctuary and spoke to the manager, explaining that I was planning a surprise for my best friend and needed their help with timing. I'd like to upgrade our packages to include the full-day experience, I said. But here's the thing. I need her phone to be completely unreachable during our treatments. No interruptions, no work calls, nothing. The manager was happy to accommodate. They had a digital detox option where phones were locked in a special container during treatments, ensuring complete relaxation without any electronic distractions. Perfect, I said. And can you make sure our appointments run from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.? I want this to be really special. 7 hours. 7 hours where Jess would be completely out of communication with David, unable to coordinate their usual weekend rendezvous. Meanwhile, I had different plans for David. On Tuesday evening, during our regular family dinner, I casually mentioned the spa day. Jess and I are doing a girls' day Saturday, I told David. Full day at the spa in Granite Bay. We probably won't be back until evening. I watched David's face carefully. There was a flicker of something. Disappointment? Frustration? Before he composed himself. That sounds fun, he said. You deserve a relaxing day. What do you think you'll do? Maybe take the kids somewhere fun. Actually, David said, cutting his steak with more force than necessary, I was thinking of catching up on some work. Maybe going into the office for a few hours to get ahead on that Seattle presentation. There was His plan to use my spa day as an opportunity to spend uninterrupted time with Jess, not realizing that she'd be locked away with me for 7 hours. On a Saturday? I asked innocently. That's dedication. You know how it is. Sometimes you have to put in the extra hours to get ahead. After dinner, I called my mother and asked if she could take Emma and Jake for a sleepover Saturday night. David and I are thinking of having a date night after my spa day, I explained. Maybe dinner and a movie like old times. Of course, honey. The kids love staying here. I'll pick them up Saturday morning. Perfect. With the twins safely at my mother's house, David and I would be alone when he realized his weekend affair plans had been derailed. But the spa day was just the opening move. The real trap was much more elaborate that I spent the rest of the week making phone calls and sending emails, carefully orchestrating an event that would expose David and Jess in the most devastating way possible. First, I called our mutual friends, couples we'd known for years, people who'd been at our wedding, who'd watched our children grow up, who considered David and Jess part of their extended family. I'm planning a surprise appreciation dinner for David, I told each couple. He's been working so hard lately and I want to show him how much his friends and family love him. Can you come this Saturday at 7 p.m.? It's going to be a surprise, so please don't mention it if you see him. Everyone was delighted to be included. The Thompsons, who lived 3 houses down from us. Mark and Jennifer Wells, David's college friends who'd introduced us at that party in 2014. The Patels, who'd been our neighbors for 5 years and had become close family friends. Then I called David's parents in Modesto and his younger sister Amy in Los Angeles. I'm throwing David a surprise party, I explained to his mother, Patricia. Nothing fancy, just close friends and family. He's been so stressed with work lately, and I thought it would be nice to remind him how many people care about him. Patricia was thrilled. Oh, Patricia, that's so thoughtful of you. We'll be there. Should we bring anything? Just yourselves. And Patricia? Could you not mention this to David when you talk to him? I want it to be a complete surprise. Of course, dear. He's going to be so happy. Amy was equally enthusiastic, promising to drive up from LA for the occasion. The final piece of the puzzle was the most delicate. I needed Jess to be at the dinner party, but I couldn't invite her directly. That would ruin the surprise element of what I was planning. So I called Linda Chin instead. Linda, I said, I'm throwing a surprise appreciation dinner for David this Saturday evening. Family and close friends. I know Jess isn't technically family, but she's been such a good friend to both David and me over the years. Do you think she'd want to come? Oh, she'd love that. Linda said immediately. Jess adores David. She's always saying what a great husband and father he is. What time should she be there? 7 p.m. And Linda? Could you make sure she doesn't mention it to David? I want it to be a complete surprise. Absolutely. He's good with surprises. This is so sweet of you, Patricia. If only you knew, I thought. By Friday afternoon, everything was in place. 15 people would be gathering at my house Saturday evening to honor my cheating husband, including his lover, his parents, his sister, and our closest friends. Mike Torres called with his final surveillance report. I have everything you need, he said. Photos, videos, a complete timeline of their activities over the past 2 weeks. The evidence is overwhelming. Thank you, Mike. I won't be needing your services after tomorrow. Mrs. Mitchell? Be careful tonight. Whatever you're planning, make sure you have witnesses and support. Oh, I'll have plenty of both. Saturday morning arrived clear and sunny, perfect California weather for what was going to be the worst day of David Mitchell's life. Saturday morning unfolded exactly as I'd hoped. My mother picked up Emma and Jake at 9 a.m., chattering excitedly about their sleepover plans and completely unaware of what was about to unfold. Have fun at the spa, sweetheart, she told me, hugging me goodbye. You look like you need some relaxation. If only she knew that today would be anything but relaxing. At 8:45 a.m. I picked up Jess from her apartment. She looked beautiful as always, designer workout clothes, perfect makeup, her hair in a messy bun that had probably taken 20 minutes to achieve. I can't wait for this, she said, settling into my passenger seat. I've been looking forward to it all week. Work has been absolutely insane. I bet, I said, thinking about her afternoon hotel visits with my husband. You've seemed really stressed lately. You know how it is. Sometimes life gets complicated and you need a day like this to reset and refocus. We chatted about normal things during the drive to Granite Bay. Work, weekend plans, a new restaurant she wanted to try. Just two best friends heading out for a spa day if you ignored the fact that one of us was about to destroy the other's life. At the sanctuary spa, we were greeted by the manager, who explained the digital detox component of our package with enthusiasm. We find that our clients get so much more out of their treatments when they're completely disconnected from the outside world, she explained, holding up a small locked box. Your phones will be safe and secure, and you won't be tempted to check messages or emails. Jess hesitated for just a moment. What if there's an emergency? Our front desk can take messages for you, the manager assured her. But we find that most emergencies aren't really emergencies at all. I watched Jess reluctantly place her phone in the box, knowing that David would be trying to reach her within hours, probably growing increasingly frustrated when his calls went straight to voicemail. Our first treatment was side-by-side massages in a dimly lit room with soft music and the sound of a small waterfall. Under other circumstances, it would have been relaxing. Instead, I lay there thinking about the chaos that was probably unfolding at my house as David realized his Saturday afternoon plans had been ruined. This is exactly what I needed, Jess murmured from the table next to me. Thank you for planning this. My pleasure, I replied. That's what friends do for each other, right? Take care of each other. If she caught the edge in my voice, she didn't show it. We moved through our treatments, facials, manicures, pedicures, while I mentally rehearsed what I was going to say that evening. The manager had done an excellent job keeping us busy and our phones locked away. Every hour that passed meant David was growing more desperate to reach Jess, more frustrated with their disrupted plans. Around 2 p.m. during our couple's meditation session, the irony wasn't lost on me. I found myself studying Jess's face as she sat with her eyes closed, looking serene and peaceful. This was the woman who'd been my maid of honor, who'd held my children as babies, who'd comforted me through miscarriages and celebrated my successes. This was also the woman who'd been systematically betraying me for months, planning to steal my husband and destroy my family. How did someone compartmentalize that level of deception? At 4 p.m. sharp, we retrieved our phones from the locked box. Jess immediately turned hers on, and I watched her face change as message after message loaded. Oh my God, she muttered, scrolling through what appeared to be a dozen missed calls and twice as many text messages. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Yeah, just work stuff. You know how clients can be on weekends. But I could see her hands shaking slightly as she typed what appeared to be a quick response. David no doubt wondering where the hell she'd been all day. On the drive home, Jess was distracted, checking her phone at every red light. Sorry, she said when she caught me noticing. This client situation is just really urgent. No problem. We've all been there. I dropped her off at her apartment at 5:30 p.m., giving us both time to get ready for the evening's festivities. Though only I knew what kind of festivities were actually planned. Thank you again for today, Jess said, gathering her spa gift bag. I feel so much better. More centered, you know. I'm glad, I said. See you later. She looked confused. Later? Oh, didn't Linda tell you? You're invited to dinner at our house tonight. Just a casual thing with a few friends. She didn't mention it. What time? 7. Nothing fancy, just burgers on the grill and good company. I could see her mind working, probably calculating whether she could make an excuse to skip dinner and salvage some of her Saturday evening with David. I'll try to make it, she said finally. Great. David will be so happy to see you. I drove home with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in months. After weeks of feeling powerless, of being the victim in my own life story, I was finally about to take control of the narrative. At home, I found David in his office, pacing and talking on his phone in a voice I could hear through the closed door. He sounded agitated, frustrated. Where have you been? I heard him say. I've been calling you for hours. What do you mean, spa day? Since when do you do spa days that last all day? This is not working out the way we planned. I knocked on the office door. David? I'm home. There was a quick scramble, then the door opened. David's face was flushed, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Hey babe, he said, his voice artificially cheerful. How was your spa day? Wonderful. So relaxing. Jess and I had the best time. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Great. That's great. Actually, I invited a few people over for dinner tonight. Nothing fancy, just some friends and your parents. They're driving down from Modesto. David's face went white. Hi parents. Tonight? Patricia, I was planning to. I have some work to catch up on. On Saturday night. Come on, when's the last time we had everyone over? It'll be fun. I could see him mentally scrambling, trying to figure out how to get out of a dinner party at his own house without seeming suspicious. Who's coming? He asked. Just the usual suspects. The Thompsons, the Patels, Mark and Jennifer. Your sister Amy is driving up from LA. Oh, and Jess, of course. I ran into Linda earlier and she said Jess would love to join us. If David had looked pale before, now he looked positively gray. The thought of spending an evening with his parents, his sister, our closest friends, and his mistress all in the same room was clearly his worst nightmare. Patricia, maybe we should reschedule. Don't be silly. I've already bought all the food and everyone's looking forward to it. Besides, you've been working so hard lately. You deserve a nice evening with people who care about you. People who care about you. Including the woman you're planning to abandon me for. At 6:30 p.m. I started setting up the backyard for our dinner party. I arranged chairs in a circle around our fire pit, set up a folding table with drinks and appetizers, and made sure there was nowhere for anyone to hide or make a quick escape. David emerged from his office looking like he was headed to his own execution. Patricia, he said, we need to talk. About what? David, the first guests will be here any minute. Whatever it is can wait until tomorrow. No, it can't wait. There's something I need to tell you about. The doorbell rang. Oh, that's probably your parents. I said brightly, heading for the front door. We'll talk later, okay? I opened the door to find Patricia and Robert Mitchell, David's parents, standing on our front porch with flowers and a bottle of wine. Patricia, honey. Patricia exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. This is such a wonderful surprise. David has no idea, does he? Not a clue, I confirmed. And the beautiful thing was, that was absolutely true. By 7 p.m., my backyard was full of the most important people in David's life, all gathered to honor the man they thought they knew. Patricia Mitchell was fussing over the appetizer table, making sure everyone had drinks. Robert was showing Mark Wells photos of his latest fishing trip. Amy had arrived fashionably late with a bottle of expensive whiskey as a gift for her big brother. David moved through the crowd like a man walking through quicksand, making small talk and accepting congratulations on his recent work successes while his eyes constantly darted toward the gate, watching for Jess's arrival. David looks stressed, Jennifer Wells commented to me as we stood by the drink station. Is everything okay with work? Oh, you know David, I replied. He takes everything so seriously. That's why I thought tonight would be good for him. Remind him how many people care about him. At 7:15 p.m., Linda Chin arrived with a bottle of wine and profuse apologies. Sorry I'm a few minutes late, she told me. I had to stop and pick up Jess. Her car wouldn't start. I looked toward the gate and saw Jess walking toward us, looking absolutely stunning in a flowing sundress and sandals. She'd clearly taken time to do her hair and makeup after our spa day, probably anticipating a romantic evening with David that was now thoroughly derailed. Jess. Patricia Mitchell called out. How wonderful to see you, dear. Jess hugged David's mother warmly, then made her way around the circle, greeting everyone with the charm and grace that had made her so beloved by our friend group over the years. When she reached David, I watched their interaction carefully. Surprise. Jess said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Patricia ambushed me with this dinner invitation. Yeah, David replied, his voice tight. She's full of surprises lately. They barely looked at each other directly, but I could feel the tension radiating from both of them. All their careful planning, their secret coordination, their perfectly orchestrated affair. And here they were, trapped in my backyard with 15 witnesses, unable to communicate or coordinate without raising suspicion. I clapped my hands together to get everyone's attention. Before we eat, I wanted to take a moment to tell you all why we're here tonight. The group settled into chairs around the fire pit, drinks in hand, all eyes on me. David had frozen in place, probably wondering what I was about to say. As most of you know, I began, David has been working incredibly hard lately. Long hours, weekend work, constant phone calls and emails. He's been so dedicated to providing for our family and advancing his career. Murmurs of agreement from the group. Patricia beamed proudly at her son. But what you might not know, I continued, is that David has been keeping some big news from all of us. Haven't you, honey? David's eyes were wide with panic. Patricia, I don't think. Don't be modest. I interrupted cheerfully. Tell them about the Seattle opportunity. Relief flooded David's face as he realized I was talking about the fake job promotion rather than exposing his affair. Oh, it's just a possibility. Nothing concrete yet. Seattle? Amy asked. That's a big move. What kind of opportunity? David stumbled through an explanation of his fictional promotion while I watched Jess. She was sitting very still, probably trying to figure out how this dinner party fit into their plans for the evening, when she was supposed to be consoling David about his ruined Saturday and planning their next rendezvous. That's wonderful, son, Robert Mitchell said when David finished his vague description of the Seattle job. A chance to really advance your career. It would mean a fresh start, David said, and I caught him glancing at Jess. New opportunities, new experiences. A chance to pursue what really makes me happy. The group nodded approvingly, completely unaware of what David was really saying. But Jess understood. I watched a small smile play at the corners of her mouth as she processed his coded message about their future together. Speaking of fresh starts, I said, reaching for my phone, I've been doing some reflecting lately about our lives, our friendships, our priorities. And I've realized how important it is to be honest with the people we care about. I opened my phone and connected it to the Bluetooth speaker I'd set up on the patio table. I thought it might be fun to share some memories tonight. I put together a little slideshow of photos from the past few years. Family trips, birthday parties, holidays. All the moments that matter most. Oh, that sounds lovely. Patricia exclaimed. David, why don't you come sit next to me? I patted the empty chair beside me. This is your night after all. David reluctantly took the seat I'd indicated, which put him directly across from Jess in our circle of chairs. Perfect positioning for what was about to unfold. I'm going to start with some recent photos, I announced, swiping to the first image on my phone. This one was taken just last Tuesday. The photo appeared on my phone screen, projected through the speaker's display function onto the small screen I'd set up. It showed David and Jess on our back patio, sitting close together, laughing at something on David's phone. That's a nice picture, Jennifer said. When was this taken? Tuesday afternoon, I replied casually. While I was at the grocery store. I found it interesting because David was supposed to be working from home, and Jess wasn't supposed to be here until evening. I could feel the energy in the group shifting as people processed what they were seeing. The photo clearly showed David and Jess in an intimate moment, but not everyone had caught the implications yet. David cleared his throat. Patricia, maybe we should. Oh, this next one is even better, I interrupted, swiping to the next photo. This one showed them walking into the Marriott Hotel, David carrying a bottle of wine, both of them looking around carefully as if checking to make sure they weren't being watched. The silence that followed was deafening. I don't understand, Amy said slowly. What is this? These are photos of my husband and my best friend, I said, my voice still perfectly calm and cheerful. Having an affair. Patricia gasped. Robert's wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the patio stones. Mark Wells said, "What the fuck?" under his breath. David shot to his feet. Patricia, stop. This isn't. Sit down, David, I said, and something in my voice made him comply immediately. We're just getting started. I swiped to the next image. A screenshot of David's email to Jess about missing her while lying in bed next to me. Then another. A photo of them kissing in his office building parking lot at 10 p.m. on a Friday night. Patricia, Jess said, her voice shaking. I can explain. Can you? I turned to look at her directly for the first time that evening. Can you explain how you've been having an affair with my husband for months? How you've been coming to our house, eating our food, playing with our children, all while planning to steal my life? Linda Chin stood up abruptly. Jess, what is she talking about? It's not what it looks like, Jess said desperately. Patricia, you don't understand the whole situation. I understand perfectly, I replied. I understand that you've been fucking my husband in hotel rooms while texting me about girls' nights and friendship and how much our relationship means to you. The profanity hit the group like a physical blow. I never swore in front of David's parents, never used language like that at family gatherings. But extraordinary circumstances called for extraordinary measures. I swiped to another photo. This one showing David leaving our house with the Victoria's Secret bag, taken by my security camera. "This is my husband on Friday afternoon," I announced, taking lingerie to his mistress while telling me he was going to work. The same day his mistress texted me about work emergencies and late meetings. Amy Mitchell stood up and walked over to her brother. "David, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this to Patricia." David looked around the circle of faces. His family, his friends, all staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to pure rage. His shoulders slumped in defeat. "Amy, I can explain." "No," Amy said, her voice cutting through the evening air like a blade. "No, you can't. There is no explanation for this." Patricia Mitchell was crying silently, clutching Robert's arm. The Patels were staring at Jess like they'd never seen her before. Mark Wells was shaking his head in disbelief. But I wasn't done yet. The main event was still coming. "The best part," I said, standing up and facing the group, "is that they've been planning this for months. David has been researching job opportunities in Seattle. Not for a promotion, but so he can move there with Jess and start a new life. He's been moving money into secret bank accounts, planning to take my children away from me, all while pretending to be a loving husband and father." "That's not true," David said desperately. "Patricia, you're twisting everything." I pulled out a printed copy of his email about the Seattle plan and handed it to his mother. "Read it yourself, Patricia. Read about how your son plans to abandon his family for his mistress." Patricia read the email with shaking hands, then looked at her son with an expression of complete devastation. "David, how could you do this? And Jess," I continued, turning to face my former best friend, "has been particularly creative. She's been coming to our house when I'm not here, trying on my jewelry, going through my belongings, basically auditioning to be my replacement." I showed them the security camera footage of Jess in our house, using David's spare key, making herself comfortable in our bedroom. Linda Chen walked over to her sister and slapped her across the face. "You disgust me," Linda said, her voice shaking with rage. "Patricia has been nothing but good to you. She's been like family to all of us, and this is how you repay her." Jess held her cheek, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. David and we fell in love. These things happen. It's not something we planned." "Bullshit." I exploded, finally letting my anger show. "You planned every detail of this betrayal. You coordinated your schedules, you booked hotel rooms, you lied to everyone who cares about you. You sat in my living room week after week, pretending to be my friend while you were actively destroying my marriage." The party had devolved into complete chaos. Patricia was crying harder now, being comforted by Jennifer Wells. Robert Mitchell was staring at his son like he was looking at a stranger. The Thompsons were quietly gathering their things, clearly uncomfortable with being witnesses to this level of family drama. But I wasn't finished. The best part was still coming. "There's one more thing," I announced, pulling out my phone again. "Something I think you'll all find particularly interesting." I played the audio recording I'd made of Jess's phone call from our living room. The one where she talked about how easy it was to manipulate me because I trusted them completely. Jess's voice filled the backyard. "Patricia trusts me completely. That's what makes this so easy. She'll be better off without him. She's been holding him back for years with her anxiety and her need for everything to be perfect and safe." The recording played for 2 minutes, Jess's words condemning her more thoroughly than anything I could have said. When it ended, the silence was complete. Linda Chen looked at her sister with an expression of pure revulsion. "I don't know who you are anymore." Amy Mitchell walked over to me and put her hand on my shoulder. "Patricia, I am so sorry. So incredibly sorry. This is not the brother I thought I knew." "It's not your fault, Amy," I said. "None of this is anyone's fault except theirs." David finally found his voice. "Patricia, please. Can we talk about this privately? All of this in front of everyone. It's not necessary. We can work this out." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. "Work this out? David, you've been planning to abandon me and our children for months. You've been stealing money from our joint accounts to finance your affair. You've been lying to everyone who loves you. What exactly do you think we're going to work out?" "The children," he said desperately. "Think about Emma and Jake. Do you want them to grow up knowing their parents couldn't make their marriage work?" "No," I said. I want them to grow up knowing that their mother had enough self-respect to refuse to be treated like garbage. I want them to learn that actions have consequences, and that people who betray the ones they claim to love don't deserve forgiveness just because asking for it is convenient. I looked around at the faces surrounding us, family and friends who'd come expecting a celebration and instead witnessed the complete destruction of a marriage. The party's over, I announced. David, you have 1 hour to pack whatever you need for the next few days. After that, I don't want you in this house until we can arrange a more permanent custody and living situation through our lawyers. Patricia, you can't just. Yes, I can. This is my house too, and I'm not going to share it with someone who's been betraying me for months. You can stay at a hotel. I'm sure you know some good ones by now. David looked around the circle of faces one more time, searching for any sign of support or sympathy. He found none. Fine, he said finally. But this isn't over. We need to talk about the children, about our assets, about... We'll talk through our lawyers, I interrupted. I've already retained Janet Morrison. I'm sure you can find your own representation. As David walked toward the house, probably to start packing, Jess stood up to follow him. Where do you think you're going? I asked. I should go, Jess stammered. Yes, you should. But not with him. You came here with Linda, you can leave with Linda. Assuming Linda still wants to be seen in public with you. Linda stood up, her face still flushed with anger. Come on, Jess. We're leaving. And when we get to your apartment, you're going to start explaining to me how you became the kind of person who could do this to someone who loved you. As Jess gathered her purse, she turned to me one last time. Patricia, I know you hate me right now, but someday I hope you'll understand that David and I never meant for this to happen. We fell in love. Real love. It's not something you can control. I stared at her for a long moment, this woman who'd been the closest thing to a sister I'd ever had, who'd shared my secrets and my dreams and my deepest fears. You're right about one thing, Jess, I said finally. I do hate you. But not because you fell in love with my husband. I hate you because you're a coward. You could have come to me months ago and told me you had feelings for David. You could have been honest about what was happening. Instead, you chose to lie and manipulate and betray, all while pretending to be my friend. That's not love, Jess. That's just selfishness. Jess opened her mouth to respond, then seemed to think better of it. She followed Linda toward the gate, leaving behind the wreckage of what had once been the most important friendship of her life. As the evening wound down and the remaining guests began to leave, I found myself standing in my backyard surrounded by the debris of what had been my life just a few hours earlier. Paper plates and plastic cups scattered across the patio. Wine stains on the outdoor furniture. The bitter smell of betrayal hanging in the air like smoke. But for the first time in months, I felt free. The next morning, I woke up alone in my king-sized bed for the first time in 8 years of marriage. The house was eerily quiet without David's usual Sunday morning routine of coffee brewing and news podcasts playing in the kitchen. Emma and Jake were still at my mother's house, blissfully unaware that their family had imploded the night before. I'd call Mom later and ask her to keep them for another day while I figured out how to explain that Daddy wouldn't be living with us anymore. My phone had been buzzing all night with calls and texts from friends and family members who'd heard about the dinner party disaster. Some were offering support, others were asking for details, a few were expressing shock and disbelief. The most surprising text came from Amy Mitchell. Patricia, I want you to know that our whole family supports you. What David did is unforgivable. If you need anything, help with the kids, someone to talk to, whatever, please call me. You're still our family no matter what. I was still processing the kindness of that message when my phone rang. Janet Morrison calling on a Sunday morning. Mrs. Mitchell, she said without preamble, I heard about last night. Are you all right? Word traveled fast in legal circles apparently. I'm fine. Better than fine actually. Good. Because we need to move quickly now. David's going to lawyer up immediately and he's probably going to try to control the narrative of what happened. What do you mean? He's going to claim you ambushed him, that you violated his privacy by recording him and his friend. He might even try to paint you as unstable or vindictive. We need to get ahead of that. I spent the next hour on the phone with Janet going over strategy. She advised me to change the locks on the house immediately, which I could do legally since both names were on the deed. She also suggested I close our joint credit cards and open new accounts in my name only. What about the children? I asked. California family law favors joint custody arrangements, But given the circumstances, the affair, the financial deception, the plan to relocate without your consent, we can probably negotiate a favorable custody schedule. The key is showing that you're the more stable parent. After the call, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, staring out at my backyard where just 12 hours earlier I detonated my entire life. The party decorations were still there, looking pathetic in the morning light. I called my mother. Patricia, honey, I've been worried sick. Amy Mitchell called me this morning and told me, is it true? About David and Jess. It's true, Mom. There was a long pause. Oh, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. What can I do? Can you keep the twins for one more day? I need to get some things sorted out before they come home. Of course. They're having a wonderful time and they don't need to know anything until you're ready to tell them. My next call was to Marcus in Portland. Holy shit, Patricia, he said when he answered. I heard what happened. Are you okay? How did you already hear? Linda Chen called me at 7 this morning. She's beside herself about Jess. She wanted to know if there was anything she could do to help you. The fact that Jess's own sister was reaching out to support me said everything about how completely Jess had destroyed her relationships. I'm okay, I told Marcus. Actually, I feel lighter than I have in months. What's next? Divorce. Custody arrangements. Starting over. Do you need me to come down there? Not yet. But Marcus, thank you for all your help with the investigation. I couldn't have done this without you. Antima. Cease. That's what family is for. By noon, I'd accomplished several important tasks. A locksmith had changed all the locks on the house. I'd closed our joint bank accounts and opened new ones in my name only. I'd called my photography clients to let them know my schedule might be disrupted for a few weeks due to personal circumstances. I was just finishing lunch when the doorbell rang. David was standing on my front porch with a suitcase and a hangdog expression. Patricia, he said, we need to talk. No, we don't. We need to communicate through our lawyers. Please. 5 minutes. For the sake of our children, if nothing else. Against my better judgment, I let him in. We sat in our living room, my living room now, like strangers. I want you to know that I never meant for it to happen like this, David began. How did you mean for it to happen, David? Did you have a different plan for abandoning your family? I wasn't abandoning anyone. The Seattle thing. It was just an idea, a possibility. An idea you researched extensively without mentioning it to your wife. A possibility you discussed in detail with your mistress. David winced at the word mistress. Patricia, I know you're hurt. I'm not hurt, David. I'm done. There's a difference. What about Emma and Jake? What about our family? You should have thought about that before you started fucking my best friend. David recoiled as if I'd slapped him. In 8 years of marriage, he'd probably never heard me use language like that. The kids are going to need stability, he continued. They need both their parents. They'll have both their parents. Just not in the same house. Patricia, please. Can't we try counseling? Can't we work through this somehow? I stared at him, this man I'd shared a bed with, made children with, built a life with. The man who'd been planning to leave me for months while I remained completely oblivious. David, I said quietly. Do you love her? He was quiet for a long moment. Yes. More than you love me? Another pause. It's different. What Jess and I have, it's complicated. It's not complicated. You fell in love with someone else. You chose to act on those feelings instead of ending our marriage first. You chose to lie to me, to steal from me, to plan a future that didn't include me. Those were all choices, David. You don't get to unmake them now just because the consequences are uncomfortable. David stood up and walked to the window overlooking our backyard, where we'd hosted birthday parties and barbecues and holiday gatherings for years. I'm going to fight for joint custody, he said without turning around. I expected you would. And I want my fair share of our assets. This house, the savings accounts, everything. You'll get whatever the court decides you deserve. Which, given your financial deception, might not be as much as you think. David turned to face me. What happened to you, Patricia? You used to be so understanding, forgiving. I grew a spine, I replied. It's amazing what betrayal can do for your clarity. He left without another word, and I watched him drive away from the house we'd bought together 8 years ago, probably heading to Jess's apartment to lick his wounds and plan their next move. That afternoon I called my children and explained as gently as possible that Daddy would be living somewhere else for a while. Are you getting divorced like Tommy's parents? Emma asked with the brutal directness that only 7-year-olds possess. We're going to live separately for now, I told her. But you'll still see Daddy lots and we both love you very much. Is it because Daddy was mean to you? Jake wanted to know. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that hurt the people they love, I said. Daddy made some mistakes and now we need some time apart to figure things out. They seemed to accept this explanation with the resilience of children, though I knew there would be harder conversations ahead. That evening my sister Rachel called from San Francisco. I heard what happened, she said. Do you need me to come down there? Not yet. But Rachel, I might need you to be ready to take Emma and Jake for a few days if things get ugly with the divorce proceedings. Of course. Whatever you need. But Patricia, I'm proud of you. For what? For refusing to be a victim. For fighting back. For showing your kids that their mother won't tolerate being treated like garbage. Those words meant more to me than she probably realized. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Monday morning brought consequences for both David and Jess that went far beyond our ruined marriage. David's boss, Richard Jenkins, called him into a meeting at 9 a.m. Apparently, someone had forwarded screenshots of David's emails about the fictional Seattle job opportunity, along with evidence of his affair and financial misconduct. I wasn't the one who sent them, but I had my suspicions about who did. Amy Mitchell worked in HR consulting and understood the professional implications of workplace ethics violations. She'd also been devastated by her brother's behavior and wasn't inclined to protect him from consequences. By noon, David had been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation into his conduct. His company had strict policies about personal behavior that could damage their reputation. And having an affair while lying about job opportunities definitely qualified. Jess's reckoning came even swifter. Linda Chin worked at the same hospital system as several of Jess's corporate clients. When Jess's company learned that one of their senior marketing executives was involved in a highly publicized adultery scandal, they moved quickly to protect their business relationships. Jess was fired by 2 p.m. Monday, effective immediately. I learned about both developments through my new network of informants. People who'd been at the dinner party and were keeping me updated on the fallout. It seemed that my former husband and former best friend had underestimated how many people would be disgusted by their behavior. Tuesday brought a call from Mike Torres, the private investigator. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, I thought you should know that your husband and Ms. Chin have been in contact with a private investigator of their own. What kind of contact? They've hired someone to investigate you. Looking for dirt, probably trying to build a case that you're unstable or vindictive. Standard procedure for people who've been caught cheating and want to muddy the waters. What kind of dirt could they possibly find? That's what I like to hear, Mike said with a chuckle. People with clean consciences don't usually worry about investigations. But you should be aware that they're going to try to paint you as the villain in this story. Let them try. Wednesday brought the first salvo in their counterattack. David's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Harold Peterson, sent Janet Morrison a letter outlining David's version of events. According to this narrative, I was a controlling, paranoid wife who'd violated my husband's privacy and orchestrated a cruel public humiliation, instead of addressing our marital problems like a mature adult. The letter suggested that my behavior demonstrated unfitness for primary custody of our children and requested immediate supervised visitation until my mental stability could be evaluated. Janet called me as soon as she received it. This is exactly what I expected, she said. They're trying to flip the script, make you the bad guy. The good news is that we have overwhelming evidence of their deception and planning. The bad news is that custody battles can get ugly when one side feels cornered. What do? We file our own motion. We present all the evidence we've gathered, the affair, the financial deception, the plans to relocate without your consent. We show the court exactly who initiated the breakdown of this marriage. And the kids. For now they stay with you. David can have supervised visits until we can establish a permanent custody arrangement. His recent unemployment doesn't help his case for being the more stable parent. That evening, Emma asked me a question that broke my heart. Mommy, is Aunt Jess still our aunt? I knelt down to her eye level. What do you mean, sweetheart? She hasn't come over for dinner. And Daddy doesn't live here anymore. And you look sad when I mention her name. Out of the mouths of babes. Aunt Jess and I aren't friends anymore, I said carefully. Sometimes adults stop being friends when they hurt each other. Did she hurt you? Yes, baby. She hurt me very much. Then I don't want to be her friend either, Emma declared with the fierce loyalty of a 7-year-old. Thursday brought unexpected support from a source I hadn't anticipated. Patricia Mitchell, David's mother, called me in the afternoon. Patricia, she said, her voice shaky with emotion, I want you to know that Robert and I are horrified by what David has done. We raised him better than this. Patricia, you don't need to apologize for your son's choices. Yes, I do. Because we love you and we love our grandchildren, and we don't want this divorce to mean we lose you all. You'll never lose Emma and Jake. They adore their grandparents. What about you? Will you still let us be part of your life? The question surprised me. In most divorces, the in-laws automatically sided with their biological child. But Patricia and Robert Mitchell were different. They were genuinely good people who'd been as shocked by David's behavior as everyone else. Of course, I said. You're Emma and Jake's grandparents. That doesn't change just because David and I aren't married anymore. Patricia started crying. Thank you. Thank you so much. We've been so worried that we'd lose you and the children. The children need their grandparents now more than ever. And honestly, I could use the support. Friday brought news that David and Jess's relationship was already showing cracks under the pressure of public exposure and professional consequences. According to Linda Chin, who'd been reluctantly communicating with her sister, Jess was falling apart. The woman who'd been so confident about stealing my life was discovering that the reality of being publicly branded as a homewrecker was different from her romantic fantasies about true love conquering all. She keeps asking if there's any way to fix things with you, Linda told me during a phone call. She seems to think that if you forgive her, somehow everyone else will too. What did you tell her? I told her that some things can't be fixed. That some betrayals are so complete that forgiveness isn't possible. How did she react? She cried. A lot. I think she's finally beginning to understand what she's lost. Meanwhile, David was apparently struggling with his own reality check. Being unemployed, estranged from his family, and dependent on his mistress for emotional support wasn't the romantic adventure he'd envisioned when he was planning our divorce. Amy Mitchell reported that David had been calling their parents constantly, alternating between self-pity and rage. He keeps saying you've ruined his life, Amy told me. Mom finally told him that he ruined his own life and needs to stop blaming you for the consequences of his choices. Saturday marked exactly 1 week since the dinner party that had changed everything. I spent the morning at Emma and Jake's soccer games, sitting with other parents who'd been at the party and were still processing what they'd witnessed. How are you holding up? Jennifer Wells asked as we watched our kids run around the field. Better than I expected, I said honestly. It's strange, but I feel lighter. Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there. You seem different. Stronger. I think I am stronger. Finding out the truth about David and Jess was devastating, but it was also liberating. I'm not living a lie anymore. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called some photographer colleagues about potential collaboration opportunities. I'd been so focused on my marriage and family that I'd let my professional network atrophy. Now, faced with the prospect of being a single mother, I needed to rebuild those connections. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Word had somehow gotten out about my situation. Small professional communities are like that. And several photographers offered to refer clients to me or collaborate on larger projects. Patricia, said Maria Santos, a wedding photographer I'd worked with years earlier. I've been following your work on Instagram and you've really developed your style. Have you ever thought about doing destination weddings? I have more bookings than I can handle, and I'd love to have someone reliable to refer overflow to. Destination weddings. Travel. New experiences. The kind of opportunities that would have been impossible when I was married to someone who preferred predictable routines and family obligations. I'd love to explore that, I told her. Sunday evening, as I was putting the twins to bed, Jake asked me a question that showed how much he'd been processing. Mommy, when people get divorced, do they stop loving each other? I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes people love each other but can't live together anymore. And sometimes people think they love someone, but they don't really understand what love means. Did Daddy stop loving us? Please hit the subscribe button, like and comment. My heart broke a little. No baby. Daddy loves you and Emma very much. He made some bad choices that hurt our family, but that doesn't mean he stopped loving you. What about you? Do you still love Daddy? What will you answer them? That was harder to answer. Did I still love the man I'd married? Or had that man been a fiction all along? I love the Daddy you and Emma know, I said finally. The man who teaches you to ride bikes and reads you bedtime stories. But the Daddy I was married to, he hurt me very badly. So I'm not going to be married to him anymore. Jake nodded seriously. Like when Tommy pushes kids on the playground. You can still like Tommy, but you don't want to play with him anymore. Exactly like that. As I turned off his bedroom light, I realized that my 7-year-old son had just articulated something profound. You can love someone and still refuse to accept unacceptable behavior from them. It was a lesson I was still learning myself. 3 weeks after the dinner party, I was sitting in my lawyer's office reviewing divorce papers when Janet Morrison asked me a question I hadn't expected. Patricia, what do you want your life to look like 5 years from now? I'd been so focused on the immediate crisis, custody arrangements, property division, financial security, that I hadn't thought about the bigger picture. I want to be happy, I said after a moment. I want Emma and Jake to be happy. I want to build a photography business that I'm proud of. I want to travel maybe. I want to wake up every morning knowing that the people in my life are there because they choose to be, not because they're trapped by obligation or lies. Those are good goals, Janet said. And based on what I'm seeing in these negotiations, they're all achievable. The divorce proceedings were moving faster than expected. David's unemployment and the evidence of his affair had weakened his negotiating position considerably. His lawyer was pushing for a quick settlement rather than a drawn-out court battle that would only expose more of David's questionable behavior. He's agreed to your custody proposal, Janet continued. You get primary custody, he gets every other weekend plus alternating holidays. He's also agreed to maintain health insurance for the children and pay child support at the standard rate. What about the house? You keep the house. He gets his half of the equity when you sell it or refinance, but you have primary residence until the children are 18. And the savings accounts? Split 50-50 minus the money he transferred to his secret account. That all goes back to you as restitution for financial deception. I was getting almost everything I'd asked for. David, it seemed, was more interested in ending. They wanted someone who understood the real meaning of commitment. I also started dating again cautiously. A few coffee dates, one relationship that lasted 3 months before we realized we were better as friends. I wasn't in any hurry to remarry. I was enjoying my independence too much. David, meanwhile, had found some stability in his new life. His new job wasn't as prestigious as his old one, but it was steady. He'd started dating someone new, a divorced mother of 2 who seemed nice enough from the brief interactions I'd had with her during kid pickups. Most importantly, he'd become a better father. The shame of losing his family had motivated him to be more present and intentional during his time with Emma and Jake. He was no longer the distracted workaholic who'd treated parenting like an afterthought. I think Daddy learned from his mistakes, Emma told me one Sunday evening after returning from a weekend at his apartment. He pays attention to us now. He doesn't look at his phone when we're talking. It was a small grace note in an otherwise painful story. The idea that maybe, eventually, some good could come from all the destruction. Jess, I heard through various sources, had eventually found her footing in Portland. She'd gotten a job with a non-profit organization, a significant step down from her previous corporate role but steady work that seemed to suit her better. Linda reported that Jess was in therapy, working through the issues that had led to her betrayal of our friendship. She asks about you sometimes, Linda told me during one of our periodic phone calls. She follows your blog and your Instagram. I think she's proud of what you've accomplished, even though she knows she'll never be part of your life again. I felt a complicated mix of emotions about that. Sadness for the friendship that could never be recovered, anger at the choices that had made recovery impossible, and a distant kind of gratitude that Jess was apparently working to become a better person, even if that work would never benefit me. The second anniversary of my divorce was approaching when I realized something that surprised me. I was genuinely happy. Not just content, not just surviving, actually actively happy. I was running a successful business doing work I loved. I was raising two amazing children who were growing up to be kind, resilient human beings. I had rebuilt relationships with friends and family, strengthened bonds that had been neglected during the years I'd been trying to hold together a failing marriage. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my own instincts again. I discovered that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, more capable of handling crisis and change than I'd given myself credit for. The woman who'd hidden behind her kitchen counter watching her husband and best friend betray her was gone. In her place was someone who faced problems head-on, who refused to accept less than she deserved, who understood that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can also be the best thing, if you're brave enough to rebuild from the ashes. I'm writing this final chapter from my home office in Portland, Oregon. Yes, the same Portland where Marcus lives, where Jess moved after our friendship ended, where I eventually relocated when Emma and Jake started 4th grade. The move wasn't about running away from my past, or even running toward my future. It was about building something entirely new. My book had been successful enough that I could afford to make choices based on what I wanted rather than what I needed. And what I wanted was to be closer to my brother, to live in a city that felt full of possibilities, to give my children a chance to grow up somewhere that wasn't haunted by their parents' failed marriage. David fought the move initially. His lawyer argued that relocating the children to a different state violated their custody agreement. But when it became clear that I was moving regardless, and that he could either negotiate a new arrangement or face a prolonged court battle, he eventually agreed to modified visitation schedules and holidays. He visits Portland once a month for a long weekend with Emma and Jake, and they spend 2 weeks each summer with him in California. It's not ideal, but it works. The kids have adapted with the resilience that seems to be their superpower, and David has even started talking about eventually moving to Portland himself. Not because of you, he clarified during one of our rare phone conversations, but because this is where my children are growing up and I don't want to miss that. I'm dating someone now, a kind, funny man named Michael who owns a bookstore in the Pearl District and has never been married. We've been together for 8 months, taking things slowly, building something based on honesty and mutual respect rather than passion and urgency. Emma and Jake like him, which matters more to me than I expected it would. But they also understand that Michael's presence in our life doesn't diminish their importance to me. If anything, having a stable, healthy relationship in their mother's life seems to have given them a sense of security they didn't have during the chaotic final years of my marriage to David. My second book comes out next month. A follow-up that focuses on the rebuilding phase of recovery from betrayal. The response to advance copies has been even stronger than the first book, and my publisher is already talking about a third. But the real measure of my recovery isn't in book sales or business success or even personal happiness. It's in smaller moments. It's in the way I sleep peacefully every night without wondering what secrets my partner is keeping. It's in how I can trust my instincts again, knowing that when something feels wrong, I have the courage to investigate and act on what I find. It's in watching Emma and Jake grow up understanding that love shouldn't require you to accept unacceptable behavior, that commitment means being honest even when honesty is difficult, that their mother is someone who fights for what she deserves. Last week, Jake asked me a question that showed how much he's processed over the past 3 years. "Mom," he said while we were making dinner together, "do you think Daddy is a bad person?" I thought about it carefully before answering. I think Daddy made some very bad choices that hurt our family. But people aren't just good or bad, they're complicated. Daddy loves you and Emma very much and he's learned from his mistakes. That doesn't make what he did okay, but it means he's growing into a better person. What about you? Are you glad he made those bad choices? Another thoughtful question from my wise 10-year-old. I'm not glad he hurt us, I said. But I'm grateful for who I became because of how I handled it. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us teach us the most important lessons about ourselves. Like how you learned you were strong. Exactly like that. This morning I got an unexpected email. The subject line read, "Congratulations," and the sender was Jessica Chen. Pradisha, I saw the news about your second book deal in Publishers Weekly. I wanted to congratulate you even though I know I forfeited the right to celebrate your successes when I betrayed our friendship. I've been following your journey from a distance. Not stalking, just keeping track of someone who was once the most important person in my life. Seeing you thrive has been both painful and inspiring. Painful because I know I threw away something irreplaceable. Inspiring because it reminds me that people can survive even devastating betrayals and build something beautiful from the wreckage. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness or to try to rebuild what we had. I know that's impossible. I'm writing because your success feels like proof that what we did to you wasn't the end of your story. It was just the beginning of a better chapter. I hope your children know how lucky they are to have a mother who refused to be broken by circumstances beyond her control. I hope they grow up to be as strong and principled as you are. I'll always be sorry for the pain I caused you. And I'll always be proud to have known you, even though I didn't deserve the friendship you gave me. With love and respect, Jess. I read the email.